What's up guys, welcome back to Cars, Cost, and Technology. On today's video we're going to be reviewing a 2018 Dodge Challenger SRT Demon. For those of you that are new to the channel, this is actually one of many as a part of an ongoing series where I review various different vehicles based on the perspective of a Corvette owner. Now I own a 2016 Corvette Stingray, but I do everything possible to make sure that each and every review is as unbiased as possible and that I'm covering legitimate pros and cons of each vehicle, as well as going over things like cost of ownership, current technology, and much more. Now if you guys enjoy this video, definitely check out the review playlist located on my channel where I've got many more like it, and I would greatly appreciate any feedback from you guys. Now with that being said, I want to take a moment to give a huge special thanks to Big O Dodge in Greenville, South Carolina for making this video possible. I really appreciate the support of the channel, and I put all their information in the description below. If you guys are in the market for a new Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, or Ram vehicle, definitely click the link to view their website and check out some of their inventory. I would highly recommend them to any of you. Alright guys, so let's go ahead and dive into this review. I'm sure at this point most of you are very familiar with the Dodge Demon, considering how much hype was around it leading up to the announcement. The announcement itself brought in a bunch of attention, and now with customer deliveries happening all over the place, there's so many videos surfacing of first impressions and reviews as well as real-world testing. So there's a lot of great content already out on the Demon, and I may even link some of that in the description below. But I want to focus more on some in-depth information that I found very interesting, go over some topics that I haven't found much coverage on yet that you guys I think are going to find very interesting. For those of you that are sort of out of the loop, the main headline or claim to fame on the Demon is definitely going to be its straight line performance or acceleration. With Dodge claiming 840 crank horsepower with the race fuel tune, a quarter mile time of 9.65 seconds, 0 to 60 time of 2.3 seconds, as well as many other straight line numbers that are just pretty mind-blowing. A bunch of production car first, a bunch of records set. Dodge was definitely aiming for the record books of this car, and you have to give them credit for the creativity and being willing to kind of push the envelope, think outside the box, and do something that really hasn't been done before, or at least hasn't been made mainstream. And I'd love to see more manufacturers doing this, sort of catering a car to enthusiasts and not worrying so much about the production volume or the margins on the car. So again, I really like what they've achieved here and what they're doing with this project. Now the main opposing view, or what I believe a lot of critics are going to say, obviously with the more horsepower, you have to wonder, are those numbers still really impressive? Some people are going to claim with enough horsepower any car could achieve those numbers. But I'd like to show you some information that's really going to validate how much engineering and innovation had to go into achieving those performance figures. When you compare the Dodge Demon to even the most elite hypercars in the world, first of all, I want to say that there's no comparison in pricing here. Let's look more from an engineering perspective, what the Demon is working with versus what these cars are working with and what they're able to accomplish with how they've been built. The Demon is able to reach 0 to 60 in 2.3 seconds, which is either on par or better than all of these hypercars. And what I found to be really interesting is the fact that when you put your attention on the right chart, it actually has the least total combined horsepower. The reason I say total combined, two of these are hybrid powertrains, but again, the Demon is actually the underdog in this scenario with the least amount of horsepower, but still able to achieve the greatest results in terms of a launch or 0 to 60 time, and in most cases even a quarter mile time as well. What's even more interesting is it's actually weighs more than most of these cars. So with a worse power to weight ratio, less horsepower, costing significantly less, still able to achieve similar or even better performance, you have to admit there's something special there, something going on that's a little bit more than just brute power and just stacking on horsepower, praying for the best results. As a matter of fact, in my research, the only two cars that I could find ever recorded to beat the 2.3 0 to 60 time were a Porsche 918 Spyder with 2.2 seconds and a Tesla Model S P100D with the full ludicrous Easter egg mode reaching 2.28 0 to 60 time. Now it's worth noting that both of these utilize electric engines as well as all-wheel drive, and Dodge has actually built in a little clause on their claims on their website to exclude hybrids and non-mass produced cars, so they're kind of protecting themselves from what may be false advertising claims. And it's also worth noting that the Porsche 918 Spyder is no longer produced, and the Tesla Model S P100D actually has a 2.5 0 to 60 rating claimed on its website. So nobody is actually claiming a production time faster than 2.3 seconds at this time. Another kind of interesting fact about the 0 to 60 times on the Dodge Demon, for all my Corvette fans out there, the Corvette Z06 and Dodge Demon are the only two cars able to break below 3 seconds 0 to 60 times for under $100,000. Kind of a fun little challenge. If you guys can find a current production car that is able to achieve 0 to 60 in less than 3 seconds for under $100,000, I will pin you to the top of the comments, but I don't think it can be done. I've tried to look. I could be wrong though, so I'm kind of opening that little challenge for you guys up. So now that we've established that it can't just be pure horsepower that's allowing the Dodge Demon to accelerate this fast, let's take a look at some of the unique and creative new features that they've implemented to really push the straight line performance to the edge. Now, it's worth noting that some of these have been used in the past for drag racing applications, but never fitted to a production car, never optimized to work well, something that they're willing to offer a warranty on. So, keep that in mind. But let's take a look at one of the first ones that I really find to be innovative, and that's the weight transfer suspension. You'll notice that the Dodge Demon has a really high ride height, and I'm not really a fan of that. I think we've all become accustomed to street cars and high performance cars sitting really low to the ground, but you'll notice that ride height is actually a functional setting and allows the suspension to be softer and transfer the weight to the back to really plant the rear end and give the most traction that you can possibly get. Dodge actually claims when the weight transfer occurs in ideal settings, the rear tires are getting up to 13,000 pounds of total tractile force. So, an incredible amount of force hitting those rear wheels in the ideal settings with that weight transfer occurring. And then you've also got the production car drag radials. The first time a production car has been fitted with drag radials. These are just the right compound and tread pattern to be considered street legal, but definitely much more aggressive and set up more for the drag strip than they are going to be for road use, especially in poor weather conditions. But you've also got a trans brake fitted on the Demon, which, for those of you who aren't familiar, in layman's terms, is essentially just a way of locking the transmission output shaft so you can build torque without having to put pressure on the whole drive line and just using your brake. So very innovative feature there, and again, never seen on a production car before. They've got the torque reserve launch system, which I'm not going to pretend to be an engineer and understand all the inner workings of it, but essentially is a method of building boost and charge in the supercharger, as well as controlling the spark and event timing in the engine to basically create the ideal settings for an explosive launch. So you're not only getting the best of the weight transfer onto the rear tires, the most torque and momentum built up to hit the transmission with the trans brake, but now you've got ideal settings in the engine where everything is firing exactly how you want to, again, create the most explosive launch that you can get. I think the SRT power chiller and aftercooler are pretty cool. They sound the same, but they're essentially two different things. One is cooling the air going into the engine to create more power, and again, that's the SRT power chiller. The SRT or aftercooler is essentially using the AC refrigerant to cool down the engine after runs to help make sure that you're able to do more without having heat soak and losing power over time. So some really cool features there. There are more, but I thought that those really stood out to me as very innovative. And again, even whether they're taken from drag racing and implemented into a production car application, or they're totally new, I feel like, again, it's cool to see them pushing the envelope and utilizing cool features to take a lower cost and even less power, really stretch it out and get the most performance and see some crazy figures out of a car that on paper shouldn't be able to achieve that. But with that being said, let's go ahead and move on. I want to talk a little bit about pricing. We talked about how much cheaper the Dodge Demon is than say, those cars it was compared up to. But I want to talk about some of the interesting pricing and costs involved with, say, purchasing or owning a Dodge Demon. First of all, we're going to look at the options and packages available. There's kind of a myth or misconception going around that every option for the Dodge Demon is only $1. I see where that could be spread easily, considering that the most important, or probably the most common ones, like a passenger seat, rear seat, and trunk carpet, are going to be $1, as well as the Demon crate. But there are some options like a sunroof. You can get upgraded seating like the Demon that I'm reviewing has. There's a few options that do cost much more than $1, so it's worth noting. But when we look at the $1 options, you have to wonder how many people are going to get this car without a passenger seat or rear seat, without the trunk carpet. I personally would probably rather spec it with those for $1 than if you wanted to take it out. I guess you could, but there's more weight savings involved if you don't get those. Obviously a huge goal with them reducing the weight on this was for the performance. So when you spec it out with all these options, you are kind of adding that weight back in. Now, I do think that the most important $1 a Demon owner can spend is going to be on the Demon crate. Now, the reason being, the Demon crate is not only a really cool collectible item. I would imagine that for resale value down the road, having the Demon crate is going to have a huge impact on what the value of the car is, and I don't see any reason why somebody wouldn't want the Demon crate. But it is worth noting that it is $1. You do have to actually purchase it, and it is only available for purchase after you've taken delivery of the car. So some people may think it just comes with the car and you pick it up at the dealership, but this is shipped directly to the buyer separately, and it is something that you have to order. So I'd hate to be the guy that forgot to order my Demon crate, because for $1 you're getting the skinny wheels up front, which is going to allow you to get the better quarter mile times that they're advertising. It's got the high performance air filter. It's actually got the PCM that's going to allow you to change out the console buttons to run the race fuel tune. So that $1 essentially is giving you not only more horsepower, it's giving you the ability to reach those times, it's giving you a bunch of Demon branded cool tools. So like I said, I think that that's probably the single most important $1 that a Demon owner can spend. You have to make sure that you do that afterwards, because that could, again, really impact your resale value as well as your experience in owning the car if you don't have that. So I thought that was a really interesting cost involved with the car. Now let's move on and talk a little bit about, I talked about the PCM allowing the race fuel tune. I've never quoted or talked about race fuel costs in a review before because no other production cars really run on race fuel. So being that this has the tune, I thought it'd be interesting to show you guys what it would cost if you wanted to fill the tank full with race fuel. And depending on the quantity you're buying, where you're buying it from, the type, it could be up to $15 or more per gallon. With the 18.5 gallon tank in the Demon, you're looking at $277 or more per tank of gas. I don't see any reason why you'd want to fill it completely full if you're just going to the drag strip. You can do 10, 15 gallons or so, whatever, to make it through the day. But I thought that this was pretty interesting, and how expensive it would be to actually get the full 840 horsepower out of the car, especially if you wanted that on a daily basis, how much you'd have to spend on gas in comparison to, say, a $50 or $60 fill up. Depending on where you live, you're looking at hundreds of dollars. Next, I want to talk a little bit about the tires. These tires are, as I mentioned, very unique to the car because they're one of the first drag radials ever fitted on a production car. These tires are $330 a piece and can get up to around $350 a piece when buying them from the dealership with the Demon head branded on the tire. But very cool looking tires. One thing I thought was very interesting is the fact that they're 315s all around. Normally you'd see thinner tires on the front and wider tires on the back, but for whatever reason they've opted to go with wider tires all the way around on the Demon as far as the factory setup. Obviously, if you switch to the skinny tires, you're going to have much thinner tires on the front for better drag racing performance. But really cool tires, and I thought it was interesting, the setup as well as how much it costs to replace a full set of those. Now, another thing that I got a quote on that I like to share with you guys is insurance premiums. With this much horsepower, I'm sure most people are assuming that the insurance is outrageous. I've actually seen one other video where somebody did get a comparable quote, and it wasn't going to be that much more in a regular car. For me, I'm 25 years old, no tickets or at-fault accidents on my record. Obviously, your quote could be drastically different, but for me, it would be $1,174 per 6 months, or roughly $513.70 more per 6 months than it is to insure my Corvette. So more expensive there, and you can see why. It's more valuable with more horsepower. But over $2,000 per year for me to insure a Demon, which I don't find to be outrageously high, but it's definitely something. It's definitely on the high side for what you're getting. So keep that in mind if you're aspiring to buy a Demon someday. So now that we've covered some of the unique costs involved with purchasing and owning a Dodge Demon, as well as went over some performance figures, I want to begin to summarize for you guys and give you a verdict here on this review. Now, I do need to point out that unfortunately this car had very few miles on it, was nowhere near the 500-mile break-in period, and is also a sold order getting ready to be delivered to its future owner. So I was very limited on what I could and could not do with the car for the sake of the review, so unfortunately most of my conclusions will be based on published numbers by Dodge versus first-hand experiences. Now, I will say that the Dodge Demon really brings the production car to the next level and almost creates somewhat of a gray area between production car and race car that we haven't seen in the past, and I'd love to see more manufacturers do something like this in the future. And I'm really excited to see what type of rivalry this sparks amongst the rest of the automotive manufacturers, because obviously when a company steps out into somewhat uncharted territory and finds success, the others are going to want to respond and beat their offering. So us as car enthusiasts should be really excited to see the responses to the Dodge Demon from our preferred brands and what options we're going to have in the future. So exciting times for car enthusiasts. Now, there are a few downsides or cons to the Dodge Demon that I wanted to discuss. The first of which is the most obvious, and that's just the fact that this is not a very versatile car. With all the changes and adjustments they've made to it for straight line performance, they've really compromised what would be the turning capabilities and the performance on a track. It's very heavy, it's got a very high ride height, it's got very soft suspension, so it may be difficult for this to perform in a track setting or off the drag strip in a way that muscle car fans, sports car fans, even pony car fans are going to expect out of a car. But, again, being that they are very intentional and very bold about the fact that this is intended strictly for drag racing, it's hard to even call that a con, because you wouldn't purchase this car car with the intention of using it on a track. The only other thing that I want to talk about is just the fact that the Challenger body style hasn't been redesigned in so many years. You have to wonder when a refresh or redesign is coming and what impact that will have on the appeal of the Demon in the future. I don't think it'll have much, considering this is going to be more of a collectible or rare car. But anyway, guys, that pretty much does it for today's review. I hope that you did enjoy the video. If you did, please give it a like and consider sharing it with any friends who may want to watch it as well. I really do appreciate you guys watching, and I hope that each and every one of you have a great day.